He saw his friend walking on the lake, not wading, walking on the lake. And the first thing he said was, "Dude, I want to try that." And his friend was like, "Dude, come on." That's kind of what I want to talk about in this episode of Leading Leaders. Stay tuned.
The Story Power Method to captivate your audience, improve workplace culture, and 10x your fundraising.
Scan the QR code to book your first coaching call or visit storypowercoach.com.
Hey, I'm Jay Lauren Norris here with Story Power Academy, and I want you to know we've got a new course dropping just next week. That course is called The Attitude Hack. If you've been a part of the Story Power community, you know that we work on crafting intentional stories. We mine those stories, we craft those stories, we connect those stories to an audience, and we lead a narrative with them. The next level is to take those stories and deploy them in the workplace. And so there's really three phases of that. The first one is we've got to understand the very contagious nature of an attitude. The second is, how does that attitude, those stories that we've been telling, how does that impact your brand and your culture? And then finally, we're going to discuss in this next course, 6 weeks course, we're going to discuss how do you as a leader engineer attitudes, because that's your job as a leader. If you've learned how to mind, craft, and deliver stories, now you're going to learn how to see them work in the workplace. I challenge you to be a part of the Attitude Hack beginning on June 9th.
Subscribe now for access to our extensive media library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom. Begin your personal growth plan at storypoweracademy.com for leadership development and communication skills training.
I'm Jay Lauren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast. Sometimes what your friends are doing is not what you ought to be doing. Sometimes what your friends are doing, you really wish you could be doing, you're just not made for it. And sometimes you can do what your friends are doing even better than they do. It's been many years ago, but we were at Pine Cove as a family. Pine Cove is a family camp. So parents come, the kids come, the whole family comes, we have family time together, they have kid time together where the kids do what the kids do, and the grown-ups just get to hang out with each other or go to chapel or whatever. Well, this particular day, my wife and I were standing on the boat dock, actually the kind of the elevated deck outside the diner overlooking the boat dock. And we were watching the kids kind of pick their own little teams, if you will. It was canoe day, and all the kids were going out on the lake to go canoe. It's not an enormous lake. It's a pretty good sized lake, probably, 15 acres or so. And I watched all the little cheerleaders. I say they were cheerleaders. I don't know if they were actually cheerleaders, but they were the pretty crowd. The teenage girls that all had it all together. Perfect little hair, perfect little makeup. They had it all together. Perfect little bathing suits. They made their way to the canoe, and 5 or 6 of them got in the canoe, and they all identified their life jackets. None of them put them on. And they began to paddle their way across the lake. I can only imagine what the chit-chat was like inside that boat, but I can't tell you what it was because I couldn't hear them, thankfully. And then right behind them, I see the jocks. I call them the jocks because they're all, they've just got their trunks on. They've all taken their shirts off by now to show off their studly teenage muscles. Some of them still in middle school, a couple of them in high school, but they look like the guys that would be playing on the football team or the basketball team or maybe the baseball team. They all jumped in one canoe, about 5 or 6 of them, and guess where they're headed? Oh yeah, right after the boat full of girls. They're taking off as fast as they can. They're paddling, and they're making their way across the lake. Now there's still one canoe left with a bunch of kids trying to get in it. And these are kids that look like before they left their bedroom this morning, they donned their life jackets. They are buttoned up. Many of them got on sunscreen until you can barely see their face. They look like they're camouflaged, but from the sun. Some have long sleeve shirts on. Some have long swim pants on, kind of like their pajamas, but they all have their life jackets on. And as they make their way to the canoe and the first one gets in, it's kind of that tipping and rocking, and you would have thought they had the only canoe that came on an earthquake. It was unstable from the time the first person got in. And each other life-jacketed, prepared, well-prepared canoer got in that boat, the more trouble there was in that boat. It was tumultuous. It was like a storm was just on that boat. The other two boats are just zooming across the lake. But this boat seems, I don't know, like destined for disaster. I want to take you out of that moment for just a moment, and I want you to ask yourself, have you ever been in that place where you felt like, I am fully prepared, and yet sometimes disaster strikes when it seems like you're fully prepared and you realize there is no preparation for this. As a firefighter, one of the things that we learned to do is called a capillary refill test. It's just a quick check. Basically, if someone is trapped in a car or they're pinned in an accident, we would have to do these exercises for mass casualty, like an aircraft crash where there were a lot of people on board. And the capillary refill literally just means you squeeze a toenail or you squeeze a thumbnail or a fingernail, and what you're looking for is to see how fast the color comes back when you squeeze all the blood out of it. And if somebody is in a bad position, you might find that there's no capillary refill, and so you're really in a bad spot, because that means that limb is either losing blood to internal bleeding or it's losing blood because it's pinned somewhere, it's cut off like a tourniquet. And so that becomes one of your first problems to solve. Well, every time we did these mass casualty exercises, it dawned on me that when that plane came from up there to down here, there was zero time to prepare. You didn't get a chance to prepare. I mean, you're flying along, perhaps even asleep, and then out of nowhere, thunk, you're on the ground. And potentially everything in your life changes in an instant, and it's beyond your control. Oh, I used to marvel at the fact that I would see people get on an airplane with highly painted toenails and open-toed shoes. And I'm like, how do I do capillary refill on painted toenails or painted fingernails? I don't even know how to check. And so even that little bit of prepared, the closed-toed shoes, the clothes that if you did have to survive a couple of days after not landing on the airport, are you prepared to do that even in the minimal? Did you travel in your bathing suit with flip-flops on as if you thought you were going to land on the beach? Not in traffic, not to get in a cab, not to go to the hotel, just the plane's just going to let you out right at the shoreline. It's amazing how many people travel unprepared. Not just prepared for getting on the plane and getting off the plane, but like prepared for where they're going. Little things that I learned along the way. I don't do as much travel now as I did before, but I used to travel sometimes 2 or 3 times a month, and I'd be gone for 3 or 4 days, sometimes a week. I think my longest stint away from home for a job was 3 weeks, 21 days, straight through. And while I was gone, of course, I packed a couple of suitcases, and I also realized early on that at least a pair of undergarments, at least one full set of undergarments, some boxers, a t-shirt, and some socks should be in your backpack, your carry-on. Shove it in there right next to your toothbrush and your laptop if you have to. Because the odds that you're going to get where you're going and not have your suitcase, they seem to go up every time. I can't prevent my suitcase taking another trip than me. I can't stop that from happening. But I can prepare myself in the unpreventable event that it does. See, sometimes we think about preparation and we think, well, just how far in advance can I prepare? Should I be storing up food right now for the coming winter? I don't know, if you're a squirrel perhaps, or if you believe a lot of doomsayers that say the world is coming to an end and we're not going to have food on the grocery store shelves by the end of whatever year. But preparation is up to you. Being prepared for what's coming is an absolute necessity. If you're going to be on a body of water, like in a canoe on a 15-acre lake, and you don't know how deep it is in the middle, a life jacket's not a bad idea. A life jacket doesn't stop you, though, from turning over your boat. If the 5 of you that got in that canoe were creating an earthquake on the dock because you were so timid, nervous, scared, whatever it was, the 5 of you together in that rowboat are definitely going to create some turmoil on the water. And they did. In fact, I don't think that boat got 3 feet from the dock before it was capsized. Now, To their credit, they all got out. They walked right back up to the shore. They came right back down the boat dock. They flipped the boat over, and all 5 of them got back in there again. It probably took them 3 or 4 tries to get out to sea, so to speak. Good thing they all had their life jackets on, because that knee-deep water could have been dangerous. I don't recall seeing them capsize after they got away from the dock and out into the water. They were a little more stabilized at that point. They were all dripping wet, so they might have been heavier. I don't know why they didn't capsize again. Maybe they just figured out what it is that's turning us over. Is there a chance that the turmoil in your life, the disasters in your life, the things that you thought you were prepared for, the problems following your preparation are actually being caused by you? Is there a chance? Is there any chance that you've prepared as much as you can, but there's a little something you don't know? And you don't know what you don't know, so you don't know what to do about it, so you don't try to solve that problem. You just keep pressing forward, repeating the same actions, turning the boat over and going, I don't understand what's wrong with my boat. Maybe it's not the boat. I'm just saying. Now, the teenage girls, the cheerleader group, as I call them, they made their way across the lake, and a pretty good time. And when I say across the lake, I mean like all the way across. See, there was a unique thing about this lake, and that was because of the way it was positioned east-west and where the boat dock was. As the sun was coming up, the side of the lake where the boat dock was very much in the sun. And it was very much summertime in Texas, which means a little toasty. And they took off in their canoe, the cheerleaders, and they went in a beeline all the way across the other side of the lake, because that's where the tall pine trees created a beautiful shade. And you could sit just outside the reach of the sun and enjoy the scenery and enjoy each other's company and enjoy the morning and just chill in the shade of the giant pine trees. Beautiful idea. Creating their own serenity. I love it. And of course, I'm sure there was no drama in that boat whatsoever with 5 little cheerleaders in it. But their serenity was soon disturbed because the jocks showed up pretty quickly as well. Of course, these are all athletic dudes. Some of them pretty sizable dudes. They can move a canoe. And they were moving that canoe. You would have thought that thing had a motor. They were moving that canoe. And they made their way over to the girls' boat, and they tried to chat them up, and the girls weren't having much of it. And it seemed like the girls wanted to have girl time, and the guys wanted to have us time. And, you know, there's nothing wrong with pizza on us time, except they didn't want to have no time with y'all. And at one point, I'm watching from the shore as one of the studly young men stands up, gives him a nice Tarzan beat on his chest, climbs right up to the front edge of the canoe, balances himself. Of course, all his buddies, they got him. They got his back. They're all playing wingman. And he leaps from the front of his canoe, reaching for the side of the girls' canoe to tip it over. He wants to capsize all their pretty little hairdos into the water. And just as he is midair, it was almost like slow motion, like he sprung off the boat like a cat in a cartoon. And you're just watching him fly through the air wondering, gee, I wonder what's going to happen next. And then I noticed one of the girls at the front of the canoe grabs the oar, sticks it in the water, and just pushes really hard. And that boat pivoted perfectly from like right dead center. She just pushed the front of it maybe 2 feet. Just enough for him to miss the boat. Just enough for the cat flying through the air to do a perfect belly flop on the surface of the water. I almost certain I heard that belly flop from across the lake. I know I heard his pride shatter when it hit the water. I know I heard laughter out loud. All the girls in that boat and all the dudes in the other boat and all the kids in the boat that kept turning themselves over. Pride goes before a fall. Pride caused them to stand up and jump and try to leap into their boat. Not so good. Now, you might find yourself at this place in your life where you're seeing, I've done all I can to prepare, and yet my boat keeps capsizing. I've done all that I can to prepare, and yet some yahoo keeps jumping off of my boat trying to jump into somebody else's boat, and every time he jumps, I'm at a risk of being capsized. Maybe you're where the cheerleaders were, and some yahoo keeps trying to jump into your boat, and the best you can do is constantly avoid them. Now, there's probably 1,000 analogies that fit that same scenario. It could be that you have a jock for a partner, and he's constantly leaping off the tip of your boat and risking capsizing your entire business. driving your ministry into the ground, destroying every relationship you've ever worked for, because they're determined to be in the spotlight, to be in the front, to be up on stage, so to speak, where everybody notices them. They demand attention at all costs. And if they're part of your team and they're doing that and you're applauding them now, that's great. Applaud them while they're superstars, and then ask yourself, where are we when they actually leap? Has it changed the direction of our boat? Did it risk capsizing our boat? Did it destroy a relationship with a client we were trying to bring in, or someone we've been serving for a long period of time? Did that foolishness, did that pride, did that stepping up there into the spotlight when it wasn't quite time yet, did that crush future dreams and destinies? I mean, I can imagine after a little red belly, he walked away just fine. But nobody knows what was in that water. I have a scar on my leg to this day. Swimming in a lake when I was about 8 or 9 years old, just splashing around and waiting, and I wanted to get me completely wet. And so I threw my arms up and I dropped down to my knees and I started to splash. And when I stood up, there was a gaping wound in my calf that went perfect triangle, very, very deep between my calf muscle and my shin bone. If it had been 1/4 of an inch either way, it might have been months and months of rehab before I ever learned to walk again. But it was a giant flap of skin, and that scar is still on my leg. I was wading in the water. It was barely knee deep. You never know what you're going to land on in water like that. Could have been a tree. You never know. But moments like that can change your life. Maybe you've heard the name Joni Eareckson Tada. If not, go look her up, read her story. She was a professional, if you will, diving athlete. One dive went wrong. One completely changed her life. You may think you're moving out in boldness, but your preparation isn't what you think it was. Maybe you're moving out in boldness and your preparation was everything you wanted it to be, everything you intended it to be, everything you knew needed to be prepared for. The parents that sent their kids off to camp in the last couple of years in Central Texas, not Pine Cove, another camp, they were as prepared as they could be. But while they slept, floodwaters rushed in. The survivors, I'm sure, have harrowing stories of just holding on for dear life with nothing but the hope that they can make it. Holding on to trees, bridges, buildings, anything they can. But there were entire communities washed down the river, literally. Survival was divine. It was divine intervention. But let me tell you something. When you're 9, 10, 11 years old, you're sound asleep in your bed, you're probably not sleeping with a life jacket on. You're probably not asking where's the nearest boat. There's no way to be prepared when floodwaters come like that. You can't be prepared. You better be prepared for what's next the best you can. And if you're not sure what that statement means, send me a text message. Send me a private message. I will be delighted to help you understand. Let me liken it to this. The people who fell off that C-17 leaving Bagram Airport, they didn't fall to the ground. They fell further, right into eternity. That's a preparation that everyone should make. Not everyone does. What about being that group of cheerleaders in that boat? I mean, the extent of their preparation was they were paying attention. When this guy decided he was going to leap from one boat over to their boat, whether to dive in the boat or jump on the boat or turn the boat over, whatever his intent was, there's no way to know for sure unless he announced, I'm going to turn you over. There's no way to know for sure what his intent was. And you're going to find that in your life, that there are people around you who behave in unpredictable, ridiculous ways. And preparation for that kind of silliness is just being aware. One of the cycles of videos that I keep seeing, and maybe it's just the algorithm because I watch them in absolute fascination and fury at the same time, are these videos of people just walking up to absolute strangers and trying to knock them out. The knockout game was around a while back, but now it seems like they're predominantly young men, and they're predominantly attacking women who are not women of color. And I've seen them push them in front of moving cars, push them off of train platforms, punch them in the head and try to knock them unconscious, and they don't care about their age. 25 or 95. Beat them up, take their stuff, knock them out cold, video it, laugh about it, and walk away. And there is no prepared for that unless you're trained in martial arts or you're just very aware of your surroundings. But I can promise you, walking around like this is not adequate preparation to prevent being knocked in the head by someone with an ill intent and a boldness that says, I'll never be caught. And if I do caught, I'll get away with it. There was recently a guy who had been arrested. It was on his record. I believe it was 25 times for violent acts just like that. Was released, and within hours of his release, he still had the bracelets on from his mental wellness check at the hospital. Released from the hospital, and within hours of that, pushed an old man down the stairs to his death at the subway. I'm guessing if you're 85 and you're just trying to get down the stairs without falling yourself, there's nothing prepared in you for a moment like that. 85 years old, your gymnastic skills probably not tip-top enough to make a tumble down the stairs and land on your feet in good shape. There's no way to be prepared for a moment like that except a heightened level of awareness, situational awareness. Know where you're at, know your surroundings, know what's going on around you. In your relationships, know who you are, know who they are, know who you're doing business with, and who you're not willing to do business with. These are very important things that the one cheerleader at the front of the boat seemed to have in spades, her awareness that this guy's up to no good. Now, I don't know how bad that could have ended. She made one smart move. Push with the paddle to get the boat out of the way. Can you do the same thing? Can you get out of the way? Can you avoid a crisis when it's coming because you're alert and aware that it's coming? Can you navigate in that moment? If not, you need to work on your situational awareness. Don't walk around with your head down. Walk around with your head on a swivel. I don't care what society you're in, what culture you're in, what part of the planet you're on. I don't care if you're in the library or the grocery store. It's happened in both. It's happened while people are standing at their own mailbox in their own apartment inside a locked door thinking they're safe. I recently saw a video of a woman, her little girl, probably 8, 10 years old, kept looking out the door, waiting for the bus or their ride share, whatever it was. She's just peeking out the door, peeking out the door, peeking out the door. The camera is watching her. A guy comes walking by, sees the little girl, and thinks to himself, I want one of those. Snatches the little girl. Well, just in time, mom grabs the little girl's arm from the inside and tries to pull her back in. This guy's strong enough, he drags the little girl, and mom, because she's attached, drags him out the door, beats him, and still tries to take the little girl, but mom's not having it. And this turns into a battle right there on their doorbell camera. Situational awareness. Be aware of your surroundings. I recently sat down with my wife for a brunch, and I watched a guy walk in, sit down in his seat, and then turn his 5-year-old and his 3-year-old loose to go play outside the building in a playground where there were no